Okay, it's the end of the session. This is Mary, this is Rhoda, and this is their roadmap to success. Now they're breaking one of the new rules that we instituted, which is not being allowed the furniture, but this video does a little bit better if I have some cute puppies on my lap. So, and these two definitely fit that bill. I think what's going on, and we had a benefit today, the dogs were at daycare for the last 4 days because the guardians were out of town. And so their energy is much more subsided or lower than it normally is. We actually were just at the front door working on a door claiming exercise, and a dog walked by and they barked a little bit, but it wasn't to the same extent where they normally are. So as Mary actually demonstrates by standing up here, for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or social status they have. Sitting here says we're peers. When Mary's up here, this tells Mary that she has more authority than the people down here or the dogs. And so that can confuse the dog into thinking that it needs to protect us. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on here. I think these dogs, from what I understand, they were originally, their original guardian was an elderly woman who really didn't have any rules or structure. They really didn't even know how, the most basic of commands. They weren't even potty trained. So I think that they've gotten the impression that they need to be responsible for their human and to guard their human. And so now they have some dog reactivity issues. Mary will bite anyone who tries to pick up Rhoda. And so we've got them a little bit out of balance. So for most of the session, we focused on how we can change the leader-follower dynamic by incorporating rules and structure. So let's talk about rules first. So one of the first rules, not being allowed in the furniture, definitely not allowed up here. Only allowed up here after 30 days or as long as the period of time is we block them from getting on the furniture. And then after that, it's with an invitation only. Now use that tossing treat on the ground if they get up. Basically, I'll show you right here. So if I want to teach the dog to get down, if I force the dog down, that's kind of looked at as a negative. So what I do is I show them I have a treat, just toss on the ground, and then say the word off when the dog licks it up off the floor. Now, if the dog tried to come back a second time, I'd flash my hand at the last minute to block, but don't stand here or sit here like this. Wait for them to do it and then flash your hand. Now, for this, I would recommend getting X mats, X and the M-A-T-S. You need to have one on probably on each cushion, but this way the dogs won't want to go up here, and the guardian doesn't have to spend the whole time blocking. And then after the 30-day period or whatever the length of time is, we invite the dogs up. It's a one-time exception with an invitation from a human and only for good behavior. Another rule would be the dogs have to sit before we let them in or out of the door. Go to the door, say sit once. If they don't sit within 3 seconds, walk away, ask Alexa for a 60-second timer. After 60 seconds, go back to the door and tell them again, sit. If they don't sit within 3 seconds this time, walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, and so on. As soon as the dog sits, you open the door. That becomes the reward. So the dog will eventually go sit at the door as its way of saying, I would like to go outside. Let me see, other rules. When the humans are eating, the dog should not be within 7 feet of the humans who are eating. So I would say that we have kind of the couch here that can create a square if we extended the boundary here and there. So I'd say that when the guardians are here eating, the dogs are not allowed to be in the squared area. If they're in the kitchen preparing food, not allowed to be in the kitchen. If we're at the dining room table, they're not to be within about 7 feet. So for dogs, that's just an inappropriate distance for them to be, and that's how they would actually challenge for something, is by invading personal space and trying to intimidate the person into giving up the thing. Let me see, we also talked about feeding. Right now the guardians feed the dogs and then they go to work, and the guardians don't eat here. So the dogs don't see the humans eating first, and then when they come back from work, they feed the dogs, and then they eat a couple hours later. So the dogs eat in the order of the rank, and it is the most important activity they participate in. So just adding a little dominion to feeding time will really help the dogs start to see the humans acting like authority figures, the same thing with enforcing the rules. So basically what I'd like the guardians to do is whoever's feeding them to eat something, what I usually do is put food in the bowls first and don't let them have access to it, using those escalating consequences to block them away. Then I eat something in 5 more bites, preferably something crunchy like a carrot, celery, nuts, or something like that. When I get done, then I'm going to invite, is it Mary that eats first?
Rhoda.
Rhoda eats first. So we're going to invite Rhoda to come over and eat, and when she takes her first bite of food, say a type of a name that means to eat. Make it a type of food that you really like sushi or chicken piccata or your favorite restaurant or whatever it is. And every time that she takes her first bite of food for 2 months, she hears Dario's. Every time she takes that first bite of food. When Mary hears Dario's, there's no food in her mouth, so it doesn't mean the same thing to her. When Rhoda's done, she has to leave at least 7 feet away. Then we invite Mary up, and Mary eats food that was already waiting in her bowl, and we say a different word for her. This way we can tell the dogs to eat on command. And again, by keeping the dogs at a distance, that helps us act or practice like being a leader, practice like acting like a leader, and the dogs see that we're controlling and adding structure to something that's very important for them. That will give us a lot of credit. Let me see, we went over potty training tips. Remember to say the command word when when the dog starts to pee or poop, say it within 3 seconds. When it gets done, pop the treat in its mouth and say pence a second time after the dog finishes doing its business. Don't say pence too excitedly. I don't think anyone's ever said pence excitedly, but say it in a normal tone of voice. If you say it too excited, sometimes you can stop the dog from urinating or defecating. Now, I also talked to the guardians about exercise. Right now, they're depleted because they've been at dog daycare, but that's not normally going to be the case. So I talked about starting an exercise journal. Write down the date at the top and write down each dog's name, and then write down the times, and write down the time and how many up downs in the stairs, how many times we chased the laser, how many times we did fetch, how long the walk was, or whatever it was. Also write down the times you feed them, the times that they have that they go to the bathroom, if there's a barking incident at the door or anything else unusual that goes on, write that stuff down as well. Keep this for about 3 to 4 weeks, and after a couple weeks, you should start seeing the potty window and knowing when they have to go potty. But also you start to identify, you know what's been longer than this number of hours, that's when they tend to get into trouble. The dog, I showed them how to create a dog bed and Riverdale. So basically, go to Groupon and get the dog bed. Make sure you get a dog bed that's solid color, no pattern. It should be either light gray, khaki, or a white. And the ones I like to get are either Sealy Posturepedic or the memory foam. The nice thing about that, good job. One of the dogs just got right up here and he corrected that. But Groupon's a lot cheaper. I'd get one that's like a medium to large size so that you can actually get both dogs sleeping on it together and put them in each room of the house. I would actually probably put the dog bed normally underneath here because the underneath of the overhang that's over here on the underneath the TV stand will give them a little bit of comfort, shelter. But also we're watching TV, so the dog's like, wow, they're just looking at us all the time. Well, we're really just watching the TV that's above them. Toss those treats the way I showed you. If you forget how to do that, message me. I have a video on that I can show you. Also, if I forgot to put the video, if you don't have a link in the text above this, on showing you how to claim the door, let me know and I can add that into the text. But that's something I want you guys to call here. That's passive training. We'll talk about that in a sec. Then we want the guardians to call or text one another when they're on their way home so we can pretend to be a guest. You can't go in there though. And so don't use the garage door. If your dog recognizes the timing of your engine, I can't pet you for doing that. That's light switch off. Light switch off is disengaging from the dog when it does something you don't want, and then re-engaging is when it does something you like, would be light switch on. So as soon as she steps off of my knee, I'll start petting her and I'll say the word OFF. And so that way, if I do that enough repetition, she'll start figuring out what that was. Okay, so for the, yes, oh, you're humming a little bit now, huh? If you like it, off. Right there. If that humming is something you like, whenever time they do that, you can pet them and say grumble or whatever the word is and create that actual command word. Let me see, what else did we go over? We went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Passive training is what I just was showing you there. Passive training is waiting for the dog to organically offer you the behavior that you want off without any influence from the humans. It's just recognizing it within that 3-second window of after the dog does it. So every time a dog gets down on its own, pet it and say off. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash. Every time it sits, pet it and say sit. Every time it comes to you, pet it and say come. And because these dogs like to run away, that's a really important one that I'd like you guys to get in the habit of doing. So use the word recognize or testify or whatever you want. So if somebody says recognize to me, I look at the dog and I just pet the dog and say whatever the dog's doing. If it's standing there, I assume it came and pet it and say come or here. If it's sitting, I pet it and say whatever that is. And just that command word, not good sit, just sit. And not sit, sit. Come up with a list of the official command words. If somebody's using a variance of the command word, if the word is come and somebody says come here, you say vocabulary, that person goes come. Now I use my hand like this because this actually for the dogs will look like you have something in your hand. Puppy, puppy, puppy. Mary. Rhoda. So the lower you go, the more it's for the dog. And then to put the dog into a sit, I don't think the camera angle is going to show it, but I raise my hand at an arc over the dog's head, and then I pet under the chin, and I say just the word. In this case, I would have said come or here. Even though they're putting him into a sit, coming is a more difficult thing, but that's what we're going to reward. So remember to come up with a watchword that means, hey, you're missing an opportunity to pet the dog for doing something we want, aka passive training. Also use petting with a purpose. Petting with a purpose, the dogs when I first came in were nudging or jumping up on the humans, and the humans were petting them. Anything our dog is doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. So we were inadvertently reinforcing jumping up on the human as a great way to ask for attention. The problem with that is dogs jump up on people as a way of claiming them or letting them know they're in charge, which is contributing to their problem. So next time the dog jumps up, we light switch off and bend back, or we just tell the dog immediately, sit. If it doesn't sit, then we bend back and we disengage. And as soon as that dog gets off, reach out, pet it, and say off. So we're teaching dogs, when you jump up on us, it makes me move away from you. As soon as you do something I like getting down, all of a sudden you're getting attention. With enough repetition, the dogs will start to offer that behavior. Now that, for petting with a purpose, that's redirecting the dog into it. And so telling the dog to sit and then petting under his chin and saying the word sit. Now eventually the dog will start just to prepay, come and sit in front of you. When it does that, that's kind of getting us closer to passive training, but make sure we do recognize it. Pet the dog under his chin and say the word sit, pet it as long as you want. Now also use the watchword paycheck if you suspect somebody's petting without a purpose. So somebody sees me petting the dog at standing, I say paycheck, I stop petting, tell the dog to sit, pet it on his chin, and then I can say, I asked the dog to sit, you just missed it. But if I argue about it, that tells the dog that we're on our own page. That also sounds a little bit, it might be kennel cough, which is something that dogs get sometimes at doggy daycare. If your dog starts kind of coughing up like liquid, like bile, it's probably kennel cough. That sounds exactly like it right there. And so if that's the case, you can get a lot of times you want to get your dog inoculated with that before you take it to a lot of doggy daycares. You can go to your vet and they can give you some pills to help the dog with it if it gets chronic. But if one gets it, the other one's probably going to get it. And then you're going to have your dog throwing up this little bile, clear, liquid, viscous bile all over the place. I had 4 dogs and it was no fun because it went from one to the next, the next, the next. So in the future, just have your dog get a vaccination for kennel cough. That will inoculate him for most of it. Let me see, the video above this one talks about counterconditioning to stop the dogs from, Mary from attacking whoever's picking up Rhoda. So make sure that you basically practice that in different parts of the house, follow the instructions there. And again, make sure you exercise the dogs beforehand so you take off that excess level of energy before we actually practice. And anytime the dog starts to react, won't take the treat or won't sit, then we're getting close to the breaking point. The whole point of that video above, the dog cannot react at all. Now, I showed the Guardians how to add the special twist to the martingale collar. They are reactive to other dogs on the walk, so we might need to set up a follow-up session about a month from now. We'll do some behavior adjustment training, teach them not to behave that way. I did show them the focus exercise, which is the old way that I used to actually teach dogs to do that, which can help, but behavior adjustment training is better because it helps the dog kind of figure out a new behavior on its own. But if you can catch your dog and start staring at the other dog or a person or somebody, and you can say focus, if you can catch them right away when they're not so intense into whatever they're going after, it's a lot easier for them to redirect their attention towards you. Once they get all worked up, distance is your friend. Keeps on moving the dog farther away until you can find a distance where the dog can settle itself down. Now, I'd like the Guardians to be walking the dogs on either side and keep those leashes short, not tense, but short. The Guardians we're using are retractable, and that's just no control. So when I do it, I put the leash on and I wrap it around the palm of my hand a couple times until it's a straight line, not being a tense line. Sometimes I'll wrap the last one around 2 finger, 1 finger, or 3 fingers, so I get a distance that's comfortable for me. So we're not giving the dog a lot of extra room. So if it does freak out and Mary tries to be redirective aggression towards Rhoda, we can actually hold them apart and have more control of the situation and help them practice not doing that. But in an ideal situation, it'd be nice to actually have somebody else with another dog, or maybe, like I said, we do a behavior adjustment training and work on that specifically. If you guys want to set something up and have teach the dogs to walk with a loose leash, let us know. We can hook you up with James, our lead trainer, and he can come by and show you guys how to do that. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that went over that I forgot to mention?
I think you covered it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, now if you did something you forgot to ask me about, something new happens, please call or text me. I can usually help people with a quick phone call without needing a follow-up session. Now, dog aggression, that's more intense. We usually do need to do a bat session for that. I'm thinking we might need to. But my hope is once these dogs get more exercise with that exercise journal and they start respecting the humans a little bit more as authority figures, that they start feeling that I don't need to protect the humans and I don't have to protect them from themselves or from the invaders of people passing by the house. Now, last thing is I'd like the Guardians to go to YouTube and take turns. And there's 2 Guardians and have them practice. 1 week, one Guardian's going to go to YouTube and teach the dog how to do. And I'd start out with that circle thing that I showed you. Super duper simple. Until both dogs can do a circle. And then the next week, the next Guardian teaches them maybe how to roll over. Next week, they teach them how to play dead. So the Guardians are going to alternate week in, week off. And then we're all week long, once we've taught the dogs, we're going to practice all week long with both dogs, but practice and teach them separately at first so they both know it. But then eventually you can have, now if each guardian does this for 2 months, now the dog should have about 10 commands, which is a threshold point that we want the dogs to achieve to boost their self-esteem or confidence. Now, more commands would be even better than that. Also, name all the toys. They bring you a toy.